Stay humble, stay humble, stay humble. That is what Arsenal did to Erling Haaland, and I really wanted to do this analysis. And I'm doing this analysis in the context, looking at how Arteta gave the blueprint that Chelsea should have used to actually beat Manchester City. And we know very well that Maresca faced Pep, and the approach throughout the game, especially past the 15th minute, was just pathetic. Especially the way Chelsea respected Manchester City a lot. Their out of possession structure was pathetic, and you could just see how Chelsea kept on insisting using that aggressive high line without applying pressure on the ball, because you do not play with such an aggressive high line if you're not putting pressure on the ball. And Chelsea did that, but Arsenal showed why they are miles ahead of Chelsea. And we saw the tactics that Manchester City used, especially looking to try and play balls over the top, especially to try and get the defense line unaware. And when you have a striker like Erling Haaland who knows how to time his runs, and the wide areas being left wide open because you don't have the wingers actually tracking these positions. But Arteta showcased some intelligence, some experience. Remember, when Arteta was initially the manager of Arsenal, Pep Guardiola just used to beat him every game. But Arteta has learned on the job. Arteta has become one of the most experienced managers, and clearly his experience facing Pep is now showcasing. Before we even start our analysis, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this. Now, we know very well the way Manchester City like to play, and Manchester City looked to play the way they played against Chelsea, and this started initially from the way they looked to play during the build-up phase by stretching their centre backs wide, so wide that they can stretch Arsenal. So if a team decides to press with a 4-4-2 and the centre backs are stretched so wide, what happens is that these two players have to spread out wide to try and cover the centre backs and the goalkeepers, and this leaves a lot of space in midfield. And if Manchester City are playing with a midfield 3, they automatically outnumber this 4-4-2, and therefore Manchester City can get to play how they want, and that is just play through you. That's something that they did against Chelsea, and that's how they managed to dominate the game against Chelsea. But Arsenal were quite smart in the way they pressed Manchester City. It was not something shoddy, but you can see it's something from the training ground, something that Mikel had really worked upon. And Arsenal moved to press Manchester City in a 4-1-4-1, with Odegaard dropping in midfield to form that midfield 3, and the wingers coming in narrow, and the position of Kai Havertz being as the lone presser. Now, the role of Kai Havertz was very interesting. His main aim was to cut off a passing lane to one centre back and apply pressure on the goalkeeper. And that is something that Chelsea should have done, because Ederson kept on having space to play balls over the top, remember? But Arsenal understood the deadly weapon that Manchester City had with their goalkeeper. So they constantly made sure the goalkeeper did not have space, while the winger would position himself ready to press the wide centre backs, as the wingers picked up the wide centre backs and Odegaard and Declan Rice picked up the midfield pivots. Now, doing this limited Manchester City's options playing from the back as well as penetrating through midfield, because the midfield options were well covered, and you have athletic midfielders such as Partey and Declan Rice. Automatically you were able to do it. And even when Manchester City went long, another benefit that Arsenal have is that they have aerially dominant centre backs. Saliba and Gabriel are quite physical enough to win duels against Erling Haaland, something again that Chelsea really lacked. And in this kind of situation, we noticed that the position of Thomas Partey playing as a sweeper even further created a lot of strength for Arsenal, because now Savinho, the player who plays number 7, I'm really finding it hard to pronounce his name, you forgive me, were unable to drop in between the lines to receive the ball. And even when Manchester City looked to try and switch the ball directly back to the other centre back, remember the position of Arsenal's wingers. He was in a position where he would cover the fullback as well as be ready to pounce on the centre back. And this is how Arsenal scored the first goal. The ball is played to Akanji. Akanji is automatically pressed by Trossard, and once he has been pressed by Trossard, he loses the ball. Immediately he loses the ball, Trossard is able to win the ball, play the ball onto Kai Havertz, who's able to play the ball to Odegaard, and that's how Arsenal actually go 1-0 up. And it was very interesting also looking at the position that Declan Rice was picking, because he was actually even creating himself and giving options to Arsenal so that they are able to create a lot of problems for Manchester City, and that's how they limited Manchester City. Another thing that Arsenal did was when Manchester City were able to progress from the defense line. The way Arsenal structured themselves, they did not structure themselves like Chelsea with just a high block and no intensity. No, Arsenal were a mid block with intensity, and their line depended with the ball orientation of Manchester City's players. We would notice that the front two would press Manchester City's centre back with Odegaard joining Havertz, but that happened when Manchester City were not involving the goalkeeper during build-up. Now they will move into a 4-4-2 with Odegaard coming back into the front line, because now there was no need to clog the center, as Declan Rice and Partey would take care of that. And you could see Arsenal were not playing with such a compact block, but rather such kind of a staggered block, with the mid-forward line being slightly higher to try and deny Kovacic that space to play balls in behind. And Kovacic in particular did not have space on the ball, and that's something again they learned from Chelsea, and something that Maresca should have coached by always asking Fernandes and Palmer to stick tight on Kovacic and Gundogan. And even sometimes Arsenal reverted into a 4-3-3. And in this 4-3-3 kind of structure, the wingers are the ones who are tasked to cover Manchester City's wide centre backs, especially when Manchester City look to create a back three kind of scenario, while Havertz would sit on Kovacic, as well as looking to press John Stones in a more inclined, organized angle. Without the ball, Arsenal would move into a 4-5-1 or a 4-4-1-1 kind of structure, with the wingers dropping deep, looking to double up against Manchester City, who are also committing their fullbacks deeper. And this is something that Arsenal adapted towards the latter stages of the first half, looking just to manage the game as they were trying to go 1-0 to retain their lead in the game. There was also some level of respect that Arsenal had shown Manchester City, but with Arsenal, you know, their defense is more reliable compared to Chelsea, because their centre backs are more assured, and so they were able just to allow Manchester City to circle the ball around them with little or minimal threat. But once Manchester City equalized, we started to see Arsenal looking to play, and one way Arsenal looked to play was even involving their goalkeeper. And you know, because of Raya is not quite the best goalkeeper with the ball at his feet, Raya's main position was to try and hit the ball long. And this was coupled by both Rice, Timber joining the front line to create a front five and allowing Raya to hit the ball directly so that they will be able to win the second balls and transition, making Manchester City's aggressive press ineffective and making it quite faulty and susceptible to counter-attacks from Arsenal. And this really created problems for Manchester City, especially when they look to play to press Arsenal, because Arsenal are also good at winning those second duels or third balls and looking to effectively transition with players such as Havertz, Trossard and Martinelli, making runs from the wide areas. But we will also see sometimes Arsenal, David Raya, being able to find players such as Declan Rice in between the lines and actually find them, putting them in positions where they will play through Manchester City, with even the constant dropping deep of Odegaard even further exacerbating the problem that Manchester City were facing when trying to press Arsenal aggressively high. And looking at how Manchester City were pressing Arsenal, there was a lot of lethargicness. The pressing was not quite intense, and you can understand that based on the fatigueness that Manchester City have. They did not have the players to maintain that intensive press that they used to have some years back. Now with the ball, we started to see Thomas Partey dropping in between Saliba and Gabriel, with both Skelly and Julian Timber looking to run and hold the width, while Martinelli and Trossard will move into those inside positions. And then this would prompt either Odegaard to drop deep to try and link up play from deeper positions, while Declan Rice will look to stand up, to stay high up and act as a target man, a secondary target man, together with Kai Havertz, so that whenever they went long over Manchester City, there were a lot of options. And because Manchester City were looking to play with an aggressive high line, Partey in particular in these deep positions will look to pick runners, especially Julian Timber, who was making runs from the right back position. And this kind of structure really created problems for Manchester City, because now Arsenal centre backs were wide, they had a midfielder in between them who's competent with the ball, and Odegaard also dropping deep further created problems for Manchester City, because now the player who was marking Odegaard had no players to mark, and Odegaard now had time, especially to pick players like Leandro Trossard in the wide areas, and look to create a lot of problems for Manchester City. And this really even created the fourth and the fifth goal. As you can see, the passing sequences that Arsenal had, and this just dictates the kind of bravery that you need when you face Manchester City. And this is not a strong Manchester City side. So whenever you create these overloads against their fullbacks, Manchester City just fumble. And we saw this in the blueprint against PSG, and Chelsea did not implement this, because I said this, that you need to be very brave. You need to take the game at Manchester City. You need to run more than them. You need to pass more than them. You need to be on your game, because this Manchester City is there for the taking. Congratulations to Arsenal. They stamped their authority. They are looking at a team that is going to push Liverpool all the way to the end. What do you think? Leave your comments in the comment section area below, and thanks for watching.